Welcome to Transformers, the podcast about how business people and policymakers are creating a sustainable future. I'm your host, Kai Embren.
In today's program, my guest is Jytte Guteland. She is a member of the European Parliament for the Social Democrats since 2014. She was a lead negotiator for the European Union's climate law that reached a deal after 14 hours of talks the 21st of April 2021. Since 2019, she is a member and group leader for the Social Democratic Group in the Environment Committee, the European Parliament's largest committee. She is also working in the delegation for relations with the United States and the Committee of Foreign Affairs. She has previously worked as a political expert in the Ministry of Finance in Sweden and at the think tank Global Challenges. Welcome, Jytte.
Thank you very much.
You received recently a Climate Reality Award. Can you tell us what was behind? Why did you get this reward?
I believe it was because I'm, as the lead negotiator on the European climate law, was quite tough in the pressure, and also my initial report was very ambitious regarding the climate and how much reduction we should have on the emissions. So I believe that's the reason.
Well, so can you tell the listener what the European climate law is about?
Yes, it is regulation provisionally adopted today, declaring that the European Union will be climate neutral at the latest 2050. And then this regulation is also setting the trajectory to reach to climate neutrality. And there is targets along this pathway, and also for 2030 and 2040. And it has several amendments that is important, or paragraph that's important, on how the EU should deliver not only climate neutrality 2050 at the latest, but also deliver to the Paris Agreement and make sure that we fulfill our commitments to the Paris Agreement.
So when will it be implemented in the European Union?
It will be quite soon, next year. But
So,
let's see when we have the actual decision in the Parliament. I believe it will be very soon, and also in the Council.
yeah.
But it's
So
provisionally
that's the process.
agreed already. Yeah.
So that's the process. It's first to the Parliament and then going to the Council.
Yes, that will probably be the timeline. But both co-legislators has provisionally agreed to it, so I don't believe we will have any surprises.
I see. Have you got any reaction on the deal so far?
Yes, absolutely. During the day, it has been highly debated in the news, and also among colleagues in the Parliament. And also, I saw that the member states reacted, and there were positive comments. The majority is positive. There are also those who believe we could have accomplished more. I'm not surprised that there are comments like that, and I'm not challenged by it. I believe it's important that we also state that we need to do more. This is the first step to improve the climate legislation, the first step to do it properly, but it's yet the first step, because we need to increase the ambition further to 2030. That is my belief, but we did what we could with the circumstances we have to both increase the target for 2030, also make sure that we count better in as I mentioned, in relation to the Paris Agreement, what we have committed to. We introduce a greenhouse gas budget, which will be a conscience for the European Union that we need to deliver more. And I also am very proud that we introduce an advisory board on the EU level with climate experts that will be independent, and I believe they will also do much good to climate. They will add the value to climate by being independent and by making sure that we knows what needs to be done and where we are in relation to Paris Agreement, but also on our own pathway to climate neutrality.
Can you give any preliminary date you think that all this process to be adapted?
For the next year, we have it as our climate law also introduced in the member states. It is not a very long implementation process since it's a regulation.
I see. Well, it has been a huge work for you, as I understand. But then, when we look at to be a chief negotiator in a process like that, how was it?
It is a teamwork. So with many great things in lives, there are teams, and it's the same here. There is a team from the parliament, both with politicians as myself from different political groups, but I was the one who were leading the process and leading the meetings and drafting the first report. But there's also a team with advisors, with the legal service, with the team from the parliament that helps out to make it legally sound. And that is, of course, something we as politicians needs to make sure that it's done in a proper way. And then, of course, we also have the Commission, the EU Commission, that is the one who actually proposed the legislation in the first place, and they are also helping out, of course, facilitating during the meetings, being a bridge between the co-legislators, us, the European Parliament, and the Council, who is represented by the presidency. Now, this first half year, it's Portugal who is the presidency of the European Union, and they were tonight represented by their climate and environmental minister. And the different teams were sitting around the table, and we were going through paragraph by paragraph, and then we work with the idea to come to as many conclusion as possible. And then it comes these difficult questions where we can't agree, and then we need to go back to our teams and talk with them. How can we circumvent this problem? Can we have another proposal? Can we help out? Can we facilitate by dropping some of our amendments, or should we insist? And we insisted a lot, so therefore it was actually 14 hours, and this was the sixth negotiation with the three institutions. So we have met 6 times, long meetings, and then all the preparation ahead of every meeting. So the 14 hours today, I think that was some kind of record actually in building the legislation. But that was also because everyone thought it was important, and because we really wanted to conclude this week. And we didn't want another meeting, but we didn't want the law to be not as ambitious or as good as the institution wanted it to be.
Yeah, and 14 hours, and what was the clock then when you went home?
5 a.m. We were ready, and we took the photos, and we celebrated each other with a little applaud. We had social distance during the meeting, so we also had people remotely participating, but the head negotiators were there, but with some kept some distance between each other. We were also tested, all of us, for COVID, and we had the mask during the 14 hours. And I'm not very, I mean, I respect it, but it was a bit heavy when you speak, and I wanted to pronounce it well. I wanted people to understand what I was saying, and yet they saw this white mask and me behind, and the glasses who got also blurry from the mask, but it was so intense, and I'm really happy that we continued, that we fulfilled it. And I believe that we turned every stone here to increase the ambition. And I know that the 2030 target was the most difficult one, and many will say that we could have done more. But I will know that I did turn all the stones that were there to increase the target further.
Negotiation like this is always sort of a lot of things happening under the time. But do you have any exciting stories from the negotiation that could be interesting for the listener to get an insight on?
I would say there were absolutely the drama of the 2030 target was there all the time. That was the kind of elephant in the room, I would say. Everyone wanted to, I mean, the presidency, they didn't have a room to give what we wanted. We wanted much more. We had a 60% reduction target, so it was brutto, and they had this net target with removals and reduction in combination, and that means that the actual reduction was way lower than the parliament's reduction target, and that was all the time in the room, and sometimes in a happy way, that we were laughing, that we were so late and difficult and so on. Other times frustrating, actually, very heavy, because I want to deliver to the climate. I want to deliver for the citizens. I believe we need to do more for 2030. And I had this headache, literally headache, and how do I make sure that we both do as much as possible on the reduction, and yet don't end up where we don't have the climate law now and delay it for a year or two? That will not help. Then probably a revision would be better in the future than to delay this process, maybe with a presidency who is not as eager to do well. So that was absolutely in the room the whole time.
Let us leave the climate law for a while. And the environmental committee in the parliament has a lot of different issues to deal with, and particularly to go from an old system to something new. And one of the new areas that we talk a lot about is the circular economy. And EU also have a sort of a circular action plan, which is a part of the Green Deal. And it also means that you need to remove obstacles, tighten legislation, and come up with incentives. But the circular economy means also that you think in systems. And laws in the parliament is mostly related to the linear principle of sort of the silo thinking and How can the European Union deal with this type of changes in the society when you go from one system to another system, which are more related to our planet's needs?
Oh, this is indeed the Nobel Prize question, and we will fight the upcoming years on how to do it. There are so many question marks here, but still, I really and truly believe that politics works, and democracy, when it has a commitment, will deliver. We will learn by mistakes. We will have reform, and then another reform, and another one, and the revisions that we are doing on the different pieces of legislation that will be more and more circular every time. There are, as you say, the silos, but it's also the circles that are not there on very big sectors, and where we know that we have a huge waste, and many times we don't even have today anything that is helping us to make it circular. I'm thinking about our clothing, where we actually are throwing away a lot without even, it has not even been used, and we just throw it away. The paper industry, where we also know that we could be much more circular in Europe, and the tires is a very good example, where we also know that we could be much more circular. And there are so many different industries and products there that we need to do the job. And yet, as you mentioned, there are of course the obstacles also on that we do one thing, and then maybe we don't know how that will interact, and if we're doing something else somewhere else that is contradictory to what we're trying to do on the circular economy. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely aware of it, but I must say that I'm very impressed by the speed of this transition also in the mindset. A couple of years back, people didn't talk about the circularity the way they do today, and there were not even a thought of that. It was only the idea of new technology and have new products, and not how their footprint are on the whole chain and how it's circular. But today that is certainly always there. It's always the question, and that is helping.
Mm. But which role do you think the environmental committee can play? Because this is a sort of a cross-border issue that need to be addressed in different types of committee, and in the parliament also, that it's sort of a system that have to be in place to also give the right incentives, but also smart regulation that help the circular thinking in different part of the European Union.
I think the environmental
power. Where is the power? Is that in the environmental committee are the driver for change?
Yes, I think actually there needs to be in cooperation with different committees in the parliament, and then of course it's all as with the climate law is the co-legislators. I know that the EU Commission is committed to do more, and they will propose different ways of acting. But then it's the co-legislators, so it's also actually the member states. So we should not forget that we are two to tango here in the European Union. But in the Parliament, I would say that there is both the Environmental Committee that has the competence on climate, and without that competence in the advisors, the members, that we will lose months, years, because there is experience that needs to be there when we work with the legislative proposals. But of course, there needs to be also a very good cooperation with committees like the industry committee and the IMCO committee about the internal market, and sometimes with the trade committee. So INTA will also be very important. And we need constantly to work together on the reports, because we, of course, have competence on climate, but the industry policies in ITRE, so we need their views on how the industry can work. And in the parliament, we need to be better in working like that, especially now.
But the climate law will help you to address this type of issue because it has an overall strategy role to play for the overall European Union strategic decisions.
That is very clear, and it's really clear. I mean, I've been in the parliament since 2014, and it's not that long, but still it's another time. It is like then and now it's two different planets when it's come to climate, circular economy, environment. Back then, even though it's not that far, it's not that long ago, in 2014, these questions were even more in silos, in the corner of, or way out. If you look at the political agenda, they were at the latest or outside the room. Today, it's the center of politics. It's the big agenda. If you speak about where is Europe going, it's about the European Green Deal. And the flagship is the climate law. And we can never underestimate the political signal of that. The Environmental Committee is the biggest committee in the European Parliament. There was people fighting to be in the Environmental Committee because the members have promised the citizens in the election movement that they will act on climate, on environment. And of course, if you're supposed to do that, you need to be in the Environmental Committee. So there is another, it's night and day. It's so different.
Well, then when we go then down the line and see you have to implement other action related to the climate law, and it's a lot of small conflicts, but it's coming up. How do you reach the target? And we talk about issues like biomass, energy, the bio-CCS, the negative emission, how to be climate positive, the natural gas, fossil fuel, electrification, batteries, transport, and renewable energy. So a lot of questions that are coming up under this umbrella of the climate law. But how do you see the Nordics' role of the biomass discussion, which is very hot now, as I can see in many places, or the relationship between nature and technology and also the humans?
This is an important contribution to the climate policy, to show that the biomass can not only be of help when it comes to products, but also biofuels. We need that if we are if we should succeed, and we need to succeed in this transition. I really believe that bioeconomy is essential in many ways. I think it is important, of course, that we point out some strategic choices for the future, but we cannot depend only on one. That's too narrow, and that would also mean that we might build ourselves into this situation where we lock ourselves in. So I believe in electrification, surely. I believe that is very important for Europe, but we need the bioeconomy too. And that is for sure. We will not be as quick with electrification all over. And we need to be quick in this transition. And we already have alternatives here to help the climate, and we need to use that. So Nordic countries can really promote how to use our forest in a sustainable way, both for sustainable management of the forest, but also it's important for the removals as well. But in many other parts of Europe, you don't have that way of looking at the forest. It's only this big sink that should be used only as a removal alternative. And I think the Nordic countries can show that this can also be a big contribution to the climate tools when it comes to biofuels and also products, new products that can replace fossil fuel products.
Yeah, you point out some important thing there. And also when you look at the Nordic countries and the role that biomass has played for systems like district heating and in particularly in cities, and how big role it has played for the climate strategy.
Definitely. That will be not only one fight. I believe it will come again and again a couple of times in the upcoming future, that we need to strike the right balance here. We need to say that, of course, we understand that we need to have more removals. That is also what we said in the climate law tonight. So yes, we need more removals, and the forests need to play an important role here. But we cannot hinder sustainable management of forest that also will deliver products, biofuels, and mean that we have also new climate tools to replace the fossil fuel ones. And that we will defend. There will be many times. We have the taxonomy proposal, we have LULUCF about the forest and the land use that will come this summer as two examples.
Let us go to another area of your life, and that's of course your personal development to be a politician in Europe. How are your thoughts and your visions to become a politician from the beginning? Can you give that view? How it was?
No, actually, it didn't. It was not like that. I was engaged in my spare time. I studied economics, and I was engaged in the youth league when I was studying, both as a teenager and then as a student, and also in the student movement. And then I worked for the government when we had the social democratic government last time with Prime Minister Göran Persson. So I worked for the Minister of Finance, Per Nuder, and also for the Minister for Education. I was also helping out in his office, answering letters and so on when I was a student. And it was really interesting, and I learned a lot from these politicians, and they had a great vision for the education and also for Sweden, and I learned a lot. I also worked for a local mayor after that, and I would say it's on that way. But I would really like to engage young people to get involved. I'm very impressed by the young generation of today, their demands, their fight for climate, environment, many times also for the animal protection. I see in many of the political debates where I participate that the young generation is very aware and also active, what I do miss, but that's not only the young generation, it's also way up in people who are much older, is actually to participate as a representative for a political party, or get involved in a political party, or some kind of a movement that also will be able to change also in the parliament, or make sure that all the demands also connects to the democratic process. And the representativity of the democracy is really important. So we need to also protect that. I really believe that this is important also in the future. It is not something that's old or will not be part of the future. I mean, that would be a scary future if we don't defend the democracy. So I would want more generation to participate in the political also party system.
Yeah, when you see Greta Thunberg and other young from the young generation going out on the street and demands solution, and do you think we have a political crisis in the political parties, that they can't be attractive enough to engage the young generation?
Yes, of course it is. There is crisis for democracy in today, and we see in when we have the measure of how it's going in the world, we see that for the first time in decades it's going in the wrong direction. So this is absolutely a threat, and there are many reasons to that. I don't see the young generation as the problem, but I see that they are very strong and they can really help out, and their commitment are very real, strong, and by that passion that I see among many young people, I think there is force for the democracy. But then it needs to be also linked to the parliaments. It cannot only stay in the streets or in the social media. It needs also to find its way to how we do the decision making together, and that is a key. And that is something that will never grow old. It is a method that we need to defend for the future also. So that is something I would like to engage people in. How do we do it? So we don't stay in the street or in the social media, but that we actually choose representatives that will be linked to the movement that's strong in the social media or in the street. So we don't have weak political parties and then strong movements that is outside, not interlinked in the party system. That is dangerous.
But you must have, when you were younger, and you must have a sort of a vision of passion to change things. And what was your step to go into politics? Was it your parents, or was it something else who drive you into politics?
I think I had passion for politics in me somewhere, because I was very passionate about gender inequalities, and I know that I took debates with everyone when I was feeling that women didn't have enough power, or not power. I would say when I saw that girls were treated differently from boys, it made me angry, and that was I think for me a door opener for the political debate and change, and that we need to do things together to change the society we live in. And then but it was not for me like, oh, I will go to this youth league and get involved and change everything. Not at all. It was a friend who was my former classmate who was involved. And he said, you have lots of
Passion.
engagement and passion. You should be. And also my brother find a way in, but I would never listen to him because he's older and the big brother, and but he had also talked to that friend and said, you could work on her because she has lots of ideas. So I remind myself, because it was not easy for him. He had to try lots of times because I can be stubborn, but he was really, you should be involved. And finally he succeeded. I think about that when I see the young people. Like, it's not like if a person doesn't come into the political system only because you should come tomorrow, it's not a failure. It's actually, you need to talk a bit about it, why it's important. You need to show alternatives to that engagement and how you can connect it to the democracy building. So it's a process for everyone.
Yeah. You are also in the delegation for relations with the United States and the Committee of Foreign Affairs in your role in the European Parliament. So what is your view when you see the new president of the US taking bold steps in the direction of the Paris Agreement, a European Green Deal, the EU's role in the international climate arena, and when you think about the relationship between the US, China, Russia, ahead of COP26?
I hope that the summit will mean that there is not only a will, but also a more precise agenda from the US and the EU on what we can achieve in Glasgow, both when it comes to the national commitments from both the European Union and the US, but also when it comes to climate financing tools and how we can help out in the world. And then I think I would like to see also more concrete proposals, how it's connected between the US and the EU. I mean, we have the emission trading system in the European Union, and it would be great to interlink that to something that is more similar in the US. So we work together on how to reduce the emissions.
And China and Russia?
I believe we need to also interact with them in front of Glasgow and acknowledge what is done. I believe that China is actually doing something similar as the European Union when it comes to our climate law, but they have not the same timeline. They would like to have climate neutrality at 2060 at the latest, and that is of course a good signal from China, and we need to build on that. We cannot have a productive Glasgow or deliver to the Paris Agreement if we don't interact and cooperate on climate with also China and Russia.
So that will be the last words from you, Jytte, and I hope that the listener have been get a little bit more insights about the role to be a chief negotiator to implement a climate law in the European Union. And thank you for the talk today, and hope we keep in touch and follow your work.
We will, definitely. Thank you, Kai, for letting me be a guest in your podcast. I'm very happy about that.
I'm Kai Embren. Follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, where I will be announcing the future guests to this podcast. And you can expect about 2 programs a month. And each guest has a unique story of making business and society sustainable. So find out more, visit my homepage, kaiembren.org. Thank you for listening.